Alright, this is kind of just dedicated to everybody here because it was incredible being here last week, and I'm not trying to blow too much smoke up everybody's asses, but it was pretty unbelievable. You guys are all amazing. So, anyways, Card and I got back to the dorm and rushed into the doorway, into the darkness, straight for the white box underneath my bed that held our salvation. The cold bottle of water, laying, waiting in the mini-fridge. I'm still shaking. The excitement hasn't left me, and I'm sure I won't sleep tonight. I don't know if I can. I chugged the water and began hitting the keys. Somehow there was a gap in my timeline. The past 3 years are now a blur, and I'm a freshman in high school again. I still believe in the beauty of poetry in my words, and I get a rush of making words into sentences into my passion. This is me, though I'm older, and the hairs on my chin are longer, and I'm in college. The third night for me is like the third day. Christ is risen, as well as some Persian deity, and I was resurrected, taken from the depths of a mindless wonder and thrust into the wonderful, adventurous, romantic night that was downtown Phoenix. So, I begin. Card agreed to go. Hawaiian digs weren't our scene, and a bunch of kids in Tempe dancing around to some music so far away from the shores. Envious and hungry-filled eyes just eating the presence of every beauty sounded like pure cannibalism in my soul. Card went with me because it made sense. We left our home cold and stepped into the thick Arizona air. It was September after all. I guessed that we walked to 5th Street, then chugged down to Roosevelt and hoped we'd find the place. He followed, his $2,000 moment maker hanging around his neck like one sacred rosary. We stopped for the sky, and he quickly assumed the mark, levying his aim, steady point, and firing, taking a picture of the strangest storm I'd ever seen. The camera could have only caught a fraction of the pink madness belling over Phoenix. It looked like the brain of the most psychotic scientist breaking through some glass dome, lightning crashing, earth exploding. The street was beautiful on its own, and I felt like I was back home in California. Wooden homes that didn't simply mimic each other. People out front on the grass, glad to be alive, glad to be baking in the sun, glad to simply be. Their atoms mingling, and you could feel it like a presence of unity and welcome and still mystery and mad, all cooked into one pie. The windowsill was open, and I floated to it along the cartoon-drawn lines of smoke. Here was the bookshop. The sign read books above the doorway, a neat hole on top of an old-fashioned patio. We walked up to the pathway past rows of chairs and crates facing a mic like the rows of seats facing a movie screen. I fell in love in a bookstore. They were used, they were stacked, they were everywhere, placed in narrow multicolored bookshelves, paper tabs reading their names, inviting you in. I took a gander at some magazines and bought 4 before they could close the door. My wallet is growing smaller as my heart pulsates faster into a mad frenzy of rushing blood and tense, harsh muscle. I fell in love in a bookstore for reasons still unknown, the chairs against the carpet, the 2 artists stalking at the counter, the music and the beauty that poured from every wall. She said, "It's hard to sign your name," and I was still amazed that this place was even here, so close to the city, so close to the buildings that I was learning to call my home. Music outside sounded and a man was at a microphone. Card and I went back out the door. Now I can't tell you what the poet said out of those speakers. I can't retype those words, but I can tell you it was love and it was fear and it was passion and comedy and distress. I can tell you that I fell in love with 20 people and had my heart broken when their words stopped and the sound of the night returned. Each person spoke, and if I can close my eyes, I can still reach how great it felt to be allowed to be in their presence. The rows were filled. The smells of cigarettes filled the air, and the nomadic survivors were all around me. They had filtered down from the thickest day to come here to this yard, to this place. Somehow, whether it was Card, or it was the girl at the counter, or the musician with the flannel on, or maybe it was the fact that Hemingway was on my shirt, and he was telling me to be a man, and that this was my clean slate, and I had to face it, my name ended up on the list of speakers. It was all too much. Their words filled my ears like music, inspiring the loneliest ranter in front of your average Circle K. It was all too much. My heartbeat filled my cavity in my head and my ears and blotted out the sound of them around me, but I still felt the beauty in it all. I still understood every word. It was too much. This was the 3rd day, this was the 3rd night, and I was on my 3rd life. I hadn't smoked a cigarette in months, and I hadn't even need the rise. But when the man called my name to stand before this crowd of intellectual lovers and passionate philosophers, wordsmiths and slingers, I rose quivering for a hint of nicotine. I never thought I could stand before a mic and read. Every time I'd ever entered some coffee shop in the suburbia I used to call the Hearth, I had always wanted to, but I never could. I don't think I was afraid, it just wasn't the right time. I never felt like a writer until I stopped writing. The mic sounded off and I gave off that cliche announcement that this, like so many embarrassing and beautiful moments of my life, was my first time. Somehow, I never heard my voice, I just spoke. The words that I had left on the desk back at home were now alive in the air. This was the rush. I shook. I felt my legs shake. I felt my hands shake and move as I spoke, and I understood how you can feel music and life without any tunes, how you can dance to any picture, how you can love this short life no matter how quickly the telomeres tear apart your body, or your DNA, or the cancer eats your flesh, or the flames go out in your eyes. This was beautiful. I don't know if what I read was good. I only heard them applaud. I had applauded for everyone else, not because it was the right thing to do, but because it mattered. This mattered. The sounds of hands clasping had never felt so good as it did when it reverberated through my skull and crashed through my consciousness and out my forehead into the night sky, drifting forever into space. The rest of the night was bliss, every word spoken a tribute. I was at the altar, and no religion could ever fathom the enlightenments brought to my ears. What a wonderful thing people can be when they choose to speak with such tremendous rhythms. What a wonderful noise can reach your ears and sound off like the loudest trumpet, like the brightest parade, like the universe as it came racing towards the Buddha's stead. When it ended, I didn't know what to do. Electricity flooded my veins, and I quickly poked my head in the store to say goodbye and thanks before I left with the car towards the city. Only it didn't feel like I was heading home. Once, I wrote that I wanted to die. That was when the lights were in some far-off city, not in my head. I was 14 then, and the passion had held me in a way I couldn't understand. Once, I took the last ounce of courage I had and wrote my name on a list, stood before a beautiful crowd, and knew that I wanted to live.